On the biggest weekend of the year in the UFC, it takes a big performance to stand out from the pack, and that is exactly what Israel Adesanya delivered Friday night in the TUF 27 finale main event. He defeated Brad Tavares by unanimous decision. It was the best performance of his still very new UFC career. Dominant, pieced apart Tavares, standing up, and really seemed beyond his inexperience in the promotion. I'm Marc Raimondi with Shaun Al-Shatti for MMAfighting.com. Continued coverage of International Fight Week here in Las Vegas. We're at the Palms. Shaun, there was some talk about Adesanya, this being a little bit too early for him to face a quality opponent like Tavares in the middleweight division, a top 10 opponent, a durable veteran. It didn't seem that way in practice tonight.
Absolutely not. I mean, this was a test that even I doubted whether he would be able to pass it. It seemed like it was almost too much too soon. Boy, he proved a lot of us wrong. I mean, that was impressive. To be able to come out here in your third UFC fight, may headline a card, and just put on a show. What he did to Brad Tavares tonight was completely impressive. I mean, Brad Tavares, if you look at him historically, the kind of opposition he fights in the UFC, he only loses to A-level opponents for the most part. Israel Adesanya just came out here and blew him out of the water. So his striking is a joy to watch, man. His head is never on the center line. There's fakes and feints all over the place. The elbows and the knees. I mean, there was one point where Tavares had wrist control on him, and he kind of did like a step-in elbow from it. He was throwing like the spinning elbows like a John Jones style. It was just so impressive to watch.
To your point, Tavares only has 3 losses going back to 2011, and 2 of those losses are against one Robert Whittaker and one Yoel Romero, who are, by all intents and purposes, the 2 best middleweights in the world. Prevailing wisdom going to this fight, Shaun, was that, yes, Israel Adesanya is a tremendous striker, a champion kickboxer for many years, but the wrestling, but the grappling. Brad Tavares is durable. He's going to push him up against the cage. He's going to take him down. He's going to grind it out. It's a 5-round fight. Didn't happen. What did Adesanya do that kind of neutralized Tavares' wrestling?
I think he really showed a lot with his takedown defense and just even his slipperiness, his creativity, even on the ground. I mean, we saw it in UFC Glendale when he faced Marvin Vettori. That 3rd round, he was downed in terms of the takedowns, and he kind of just stayed down the ground. He wasn't able to get back up. Tonight, every time Brad Tavares had him either up against the cage or down on the ground, Izzy was able to slip out of there like it was nothing. It was so impressive. And again, to be able to do this against, I mean, what was Brad Tavares? Number 8 in the world or something, however he was ranked. This is Israel Adesanya's 3rd fight in the UFC. I just can't get over how impressive this was tonight.
And now that begs the question that we always ask when we're faced with a prospect, or we're faced with an up-and-coming fighter who has some charisma, who has some personality, who has some possible marketability and drawing power. What do you do next? What is too much? What is too fast? So what do you think? What is next for, and what should be next for Israel Adesanya?
I think at this point, you've let this guy plot out his career. I mean, he called out Brad Tavares, and now he's already calling out a fight, and I love the fight he's calling out. He wants the Uriah Hall versus Paulo Costa winner. That sounds amazing to me, especially after what we saw tonight. Either of those matchups, I mean, you give him Hall, that blows my mind in the possibilities of that fight. And you give him Costa, that's such an interesting contrast between the 2 body types and also the styles. And he even just cut excellent promos on both these guys. He's a very charismatic. He can hold court with the best of them. I love that fight, and I feel like if as long as those 2 don't destroy each other and are able to have some sort of decently quick turnaround, I love that fight. I hope that's the fight they book.
And just a credit to Brad Tavares, of course, also tonight. One of the toughest guys in that division. Had a very bad cut over his eye at the end of the 4th round. Continued on. There was blood in his eye in the 5th, and he made it all the way to the end. Obviously, was not the kind of performance he was probably looking for, but still a very, very tough guy, and no joke in that division. Moving on a little bit, the Ultimate Fighter 27 finals were tonight. Brad Katona won in the featherweight division, and Mike Trizano won in the lightweight division. There were a couple of other very interesting stories coming out of this as well. The Violent Bob Ross.
Violent Bob Ross, man.
Luis Pena with a tremendous win
Making
tonight.
some noise.
What did you think of his performance? Because we kind of knew him from his nickname. That was kind of the notoriety. Of course, he was on the show. He got injured. We know the nickname, but he's a pretty good fighter, is he not?
He certainly is, and he seemed like he had a point to prove. I mean, he was on that show, and he won his fight, and then he didn't get to continue because of an injury. Coming back here, I mean, he won that. He won tonight in outstanding fashion. That guillotine was tight. He comes back here and he says, I want the winner of whoever wins tonight, the Ultimate Fighter. I want to prove that I was supposed to win that show. He's an interesting cat, man. Just hearing him talking to him a little bit.
He wants unity.
He wants unity. He wants to promote unity with his fight. He wants to do the Genki Sudo flag. Like, I dig what that guy's about, and it's gonna be kind of interesting. It's interesting to sort of now just throw him in this division and see sort of where he can sink and swim.
One of the best stories of this weekend that may unfortunately get lost because of all the great fights coming on Saturday at UFC 226 is Roxanne Modafferi, who won her first UFC fight after 15 years in MMA.
Yes.
I mean,
pioneer,
going
true
in women's MMA, certainly 2003 was her first fight. She's 35 years old. Finally got the big one tonight, beating Barb Honchak, finishing her with ground and pound with some nasty elbows. It's an amazing story because of how she's reinvented herself over the years, where many people kind of wrote her off, and now here she is beating the former Invicta champion. What do you think of Roxanne's performance tonight, and also just this story, this tremendous story overall?
Unbelievable, man. She's still going from the dusty backyards of hook and shoot. Now 15 years later in the UFC, picking up her first UFC victory and doing it with a TKO, doing it with this sort of violent side of her that we really hadn't seen before, except recently. I mean, she even admitted to us afterwards she has to kind of she's hyping herself up now, where she's just, I know I usually go for submissions, but I can't do that. I need to be violent. I need to be mean. And it's so not in her nature to be mean. It's interesting to watch, and you just all the credit to her for continuing to keep on going. I mean, at one point in her career, she lost 5 straight, and it really looked like her time had passed. And look at her now. I mean, like you said, first UFC victory. It was a good one, too, over Barb Honchak, who at one point was probably one of the best fighters in this division in the world, if not the best. Credit to Roxy.
To a point where it was almost, she was losing by like slam knockouts, and there was almost like you would hold your breath when she got in there at 135 pounds because the fighters were much bigger and stronger and more powerful, and now here she is literally landing nasty elbows and winning by TKO at age 35. Incredible story in really a weekend of incredible stories. Also, Bruce Leroy, Alex Caceres had a big win over Martin Bravo by split decision. That was the fight of the night tonight. Again, a lot of cool things coming out of tonight. Tomorrow night is the big one, UFC 226. We'll be there. We'll have the preview show coming out very shortly. We'll be there the rest of the night. Continued coverage. Esther Lynn's photos. Shaun Al-Shatti.
Oh my God, Esther Lynn got one of the craziest photos I've ever seen in this main event.
Check that out at MMAfighting.com on our social media channels. For Casey, for Esther, for Shaun, I'm Marc. We'll see you guys tomorrow.